with it.
Hello, welcome to the first episode of TV Rear View with Matt Squirrel. That's me. So I really wanted to talk about this series because I kind of grew up with this a little bit. I would say, teeny bopper years, whatever the hell you want to call that. This was a television show that I only caught on reruns. I actually saw the Amazing Stories films well before I actually saw the series separately, which I regretfully saw after. But either way, it was totally worth watching. Amazing Stories has a special place in my heart. When I hear that theme song by John Williams, I'm immediately all on board every time I hear it. So, Amazing Stories actually aired on NBC. It was a mini-series, and today we're just going to go over Season 1, which was from 1985 to 1986. It's going to be a little bit of a summary, but I am going to plan on doing separate videos going over each episode, because each one is individually different and has different directors and quite the unique task. But this television show was created by Steven Spielberg, Joshua Brand, and John Falsey? Falsey? Sure. Apologies if I totally slaughtered that. Very possible. So, Spielberg had mentioned that he had been inspired by a Pulp Fiction series of the same name he had read as a child. Amazing Stories is an American science fiction magazine that was launched in April of 1926, and it was the first magazine devoted solely to science fiction. Science fiction stories had regularly made appearances in other magazines, including some published works by other authors and things like that, more like novellas or small novels. But Amazing helped define and launch a new genre of pulp fiction. Its publication bounced around over the years. So, like what you're seeing on the screen here, you have different writers like H.G. Wells and Edgar Rice Burroughs. I mean, these are authors that had done smaller stories to larger stories and not necessarily always given the notoriety that they deserved. So anyway, there is a link that you'll see in the description box where you can actually see all of these Pulp Fiction magazines online, which is absolutely amazing. That's where I got all of these specific clip pieces. But I was very excited when I found them. Anyway, so I highly encourage you to check that out. So he was inspired by seeing reading these stories as a kid, coming up with your own stories, and I know how that is because I was the same way as a kid. It's very easy to find inspiration in different things, and especially in stories that are all over the place, from paranormal to unusual. But Amazing Story episodes were often about 30 minutes long. However, a few lasted longer, maybe an hour of television. And these stories varied on themes, so they could jump from the unexplained to miraculous events, paranormal activities, more comedic situations, or even horror-based tales. There was a couple pretty horrific ones I remember watching going, well, this is nightmare fuel. But anyway, numerous actors from stage and film were often casted in these episodes, so you may find like many really recognizable faces in each episode. So from the very first episode, which is probably my favorite, it's from the first episode of Season 1, a very young Lucas Hawes appears alongside renowned character actor Roberts Well, let me do this without slaughtering the poor man's name. It's simple enough. Roberts Blossom, okay, as the kindly, and you might actually recognize him. Okay, I am going to do a review on this particular episode, but you might actually recognize him as the neighbor from the kindly old man that seemed a little spooky from Home Alone, the original that had come out. I have to say the original because God only knows what shenanigans are coming up. You know what I mean? God help us all. Also in the film, there is an unaccredited appearance by Drew Barrymore. Okay, she's found as a child passenger on the train. So in this image here, you can see her sitting alongside a lady on board this ghost train. This episode is absolutely exciting to watch. And as a little kid, you don't know whether to be horrified or amazed by the whole idea of this just very simple story. But I would absolutely encourage people to check it out for that primary reason. Look at me skipping around all over these little slides like this. This is entertainment at your finest. Anyways, but I love Roberts Blossom in general. I think he's an underrated actor. He's very unique, eccentric, but colorful and very talented. So I will also try to find this particular YouTube page that goes over character actors, and Roberts Blossom has a nice video that was done about his story and where his background comes from. It's just underrated actors every time. Anyway, but aside from this very first episode of the first season, okay, we move on to another episode that's also in the first season. Now, in this episode, it's about an hour long, and it's a 60-minute long for TV television, but it was called The Mission, which was graced by the actors of Kevin Costner, Kiefer Sutherland, Casey. I apologize. I'm gonna slaughter this poor man's last name. Doesn't deserve it. Semesco. I'm a terrible person. But in this episode, they won several Emmy Awards for example, outstanding cinematography for a series, outstanding sound editing for a series, outstanding directing in a drama series. Steven Spielberg won this Primetime Emmy Award, and outstanding editing for a series, single camera production. Now, the fun fact about The Mission that I must bring up is that The Mission was the first stereo surround sound broadcast by NBC, while many homes were not equipped with a surround decoder to play it back with the required rear channel speakers. So manufacturers such as Fisher came out with a rear channel amp decoders to complete the rear sound effects. So that's a fun, interesting fact. But what is also another little tidbit is that Kiefer and Casey, who were in this episode of The Mission, also would later on star together again in Stand By Me, and that was something that I found was kind of unusual. I was like, oh, look, there they are again. And Stand By Me came out in 1986, and then later on they would appear again together in Young Guns in 1988. So, fun facts, you are welcome. So, moving on. The other thing that's really interesting about the Amazing Stories series, aside from the stories themselves and the originality of them and the creativity that goes involved in it, is that there were plenty of unique directors that they would bring in. Interesting to point out is that 4 directors who worked on this series, okay, had became huge film directors later on in life. So, such an example is Steven Spielberg, which goes without being said. He directed Amazing Stories, Ghost Train, and The Mission, but he went on to win Schindler's List, Academy Award for Schindler's List, and Saving Private Ryan. Schindler's List was in 93, and Saving Private Ryan was 98. Clint Eastwood directed Amazing Stories, Vanessa and the Garden in 1985, but he won for Unforgiven in 92, $1 Million Baby in 2004. Then, the next person would be Martin Scorsese, okay, who directed Amazing Stories, Mirror Mirror in 1986, and then he won for The Departed in 2006. I think I just repeated myself. I don't really know anymore. And the last but not least is Robert Zemeckis, who directed Amazing Stories Go to the Head of the Class in 1986, and he won for Forrest Gump in 1994. Another notable director that also showed up in Season 1 is Michael D. Moore. He was a unit director on films such as the classic War of the Worlds from the 1950s. And when I got excited when I recognized his name, because I've seen him in other films. He also did work on Willow, Indiana Jones, James Bond's Never Say Never. So there are many fine directors I could name here, but you'll get my gist. There's some very unique faces that are brought in here. This is just for Season 1, okay, because Zemeckis and all these other directors may have come back and done other episodes at some point or another, but in the end, there was a lot of new talent they were bringing in that did go on to have very successful careers in different parts of the industry. So, much later, after, I would say, quite a few, like 1992, there was a series of films, okay, that they, pretty much a collaboration, okay, that was pretty much released on television, was made for TV, and what they did is they intermingled all of the popular episodes from the TV series with a total of 6 films. Now, they were released on network television, they were often replayed on the USA Network, that's where I saw them, but there was a total of 6 of these films, and they had all the different stories. And there's one called Gather Ye Acorns, and that one I believe has Mark Hamill in it. Absolutely recommended. I can't wait to review that. But it was one of those exciting things that was nice to see. It was that little remembrance. But also another fun fact here is that Batteries Not Included. If anyone's familiar with this film, I would highly recommend seeing it again. It was one of those films I can watch over and over again, and I never get sick of the characters and the storyline. And there were so many wonderful characters and development that went on in that story, and the excitement of having these little aliens come down. And it was a very simple idea, but at the same time, there was always this feeling to a Steven Spielberg film when I was a kid, and you could always, there was just a distinctness there. He's not the world's, quote, greatest director on earth, okay? I'm not going to go down that route, okay? But I will say he has a talent of bringing in comfort to characters, and you can easily associate with them. You can always tell it's a Steven Spielberg production because there's a touch of Steven Spielberg in there, and if that's the inner personality of how the characters are developed or how the script is written, okay, we can go down that road. I didn't go to film school. All I know is that I enjoy it. Okay. But originally, Batteries Not Included was intended to be an episode of the Amazing Story series until Steven Spielberg decided to expand it into a feature film, which was very, in my opinion, successful. So, in future, I plan on covering these Amazing Stories episodes in future videos, and I hope you will find them just as interesting as I do. In the recent years, it's been announced that by Amblin and then Apple TV that Spielberg will be relaunching Amazing Stories and started filming episodes back in November of 2018. So they started filming in Atlanta and in New Zealand, and I am going to link that in the description box below. So, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut this video short. I hope that you enjoyed the information I brought. Whoop-de-doo, you know, whatever. It's cool. It's fine. But I really love this series. I was super excited with seeing that they were going to relaunch it. There's a lot of possibilities, and because Spielberg is involved, I know that Brian Fuller had come on in the beginning, and then he kind of backed out of the situation. I don't know. It's the industry. Who the hell knows? But I am excited regardless, and I hope we bring in some new talent, too, along the way. So, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. I will talk to you later. Bye.
Mad squirrelly.